What we're actually looking at is more, it's the archetypal structure of the story as opposed to the belief or value that culture imposes upon the story. I don't know if that makes sense. So if I just use the example of, say, the crucifixion. So the classic crucifixion of Jesus. Now that's such an influential story in Western civilization. And we've got this bizarre and absurd thing, which is, in modern day Christianity, we must take the Bible as the word of God and as an accurate historical record. And it's as though that Christians have always thought that this was a accurate historical record and you must believe it word for word. But that's very recent. That's not been around that long. I mean, that was some crazy American guys who, the evangelists way back in the 1800s, they're the guys who started that movement. People didn't take this literally before then, and there's no reason why Christians should take it literally as a story. But it's the structure of the story. So the crucifixion, it's the best possible person. Basically, he is God incarnate in the flesh. So it's the best possible person experiencing the worst possible thing that was imaginable at the time. And so that takes on a very archetypal nature of basically only the good die young, it's really bad shit happens to really good people, and so on and so on. And then there's all of the micro details within the story. It's got betrayal in there. It's got cowardice in there as people flee and then deny that they know him. There's lots of details in there that resonate very powerfully for people. And it's all managed to be compiled into a coherent story. And that is central to Western civilization. It's central. A lot of the teachings from the book are also from a legal system and all sorts of stuff. So the trick would be to find what are the archetypes that have shaped your culture, your society, that resonate so powerfully with your people, as opposed to the ones that resonate with our people. Now, when I say your people, our people, of course, then as societies get bigger, they fragment. So now we have a bizarre thing here in the UK between two branches of Christianity, Protestants and Catholic, to the point that hideous acts of violence have been perpetrated by both sides upon each other over long, long periods of time. And they both have the same book. They both pretty much do exactly the same things, but there's a few little tweaks of ideological difference that are utterly insignificant within the actual religion. And yet people will have us and them. And so now within the Christian domain, you have two different branches of the culture, and they branch off. But they can't see that we are this way because of this ideology within our teachings. So now what we have is an archetype that's moving through the people. They don't even know it. Most of them have never even been to church, and most of them have never even read the fucking book. They've never even studied the subject. They just know it's us and them. I don't know if I'm explaining that. So essentially what you're looking for are what are the archetypes that help explain everyday phenomena that everyone is caught up in and doing that forms the culture, but they don't realize they're doing it.
Right. What makes it harder for us to do this stuff is, for example, Jesus, or Yeshu in Hebrew, Jesus has his own story. In Hebrew, the story of Jesus not really existed, right? Because it's only New Testament stuff.
Yeah.
So, and on. So in Judaism, we don't have Jesus, basically. And if talked about Jesus, it's like, not forbidden, but, outside of our realms. So, but basically I understand what you're saying is just work to find the stories that match the same archetypes, because these are stories. Now, basically, the same stories until the New Testament, we both have the same stories, right? Abraham and his sacrifice and everything.
But those aren't the ones that have shaped, say, British culture. It's very much the New Testament, because you have to look at how are these things communicated to the culture. And if we look at, say, what happens in schools, so as a small child, we sung hymns, we sung songs that are based around the New Testament. We say prayers that are based around the teachings of the New Testament. We do little plays in the, in assembly or in front of the schools or at
That's
the
in
festival
school.
times. Yeah, so at school we are living, embodying, and reenacting a lot of those aspects of the Christian teachings.
Right.
And so we are then shaped with that. And there's lots of movies as well. From my childhood, there were a lot of Bible movies and stuff. And you
Right.
tend to have two types of presentation of it. You have that ancient reality, and so you get the epic movies of Moses and stuff like that. And they take on a fantastical realm. They're not a truth. They're an epic film to watch. And then you get the stuff that is the Christian, and that's being sold to us as truth. And even if people don't believe in it...
As history.
Right, exactly. But even if people don't believe in it, they then are still shaped by that because it is in the language. And that's the most important part. It infiltrates into the language. And then people repeating it even though they don't realize they're repeating it.
Right. Basically, in Israel, the rigid Orthodox religious people, some of them have schools where all they do is chanting and reading from the books. Okay? And in regular schools, we have the Bible. We read the stories, trying to interpret stuff, and like regular people, not as a history book, but as interpret a story. So there's that and that, but still, because I'm Jewish, I'm supposed to believe that these stories were real.
Yes.
See, so also differentiate the historical view or the just a story view. That's really hard in Hebrew, in Israel. Anything else you want to say about that?
Yeah, I think for me that one of the things is the issue of belief. And that what the problem is, the moment you start debating or discussing anything to do with religion, it always gets reduced down to belief. And I find that a massive hindrance to basically any of the teachings or understandings of what's communicated within those stories. I see a lot of these things as little more than educational stories and archetypes, but most importantly, they're metaphorical. And the belief is unnecessary. The biggest challenge is the moment, if I start talking about these things in any capacity, people will often go, well, Austin, you don't believe in that stuff, do you? And at that moment, everything is lost. There is no hope in communicating anything of any value with that individual because everything just gets reduced down to belief in that stuff. And whatever they think that stuff actually constitutes, they're down measuring whether I believe in it or not to how they will then respond. And belief is irrelevant.
You talk about the non-religious people?
Both. Both, because either people are saying, well, you're one of us because you're a believer,
right?
Or you're not one of us because you're a believer, or you're not one of us because you're not a believer, and so on. And it just becomes this absurd thing, which is, what's your ideology? Does your ideology, is it the correct one? Are you one of us or are you one of them? And if you're not one of us, then I can't be positively kind or nice to you anymore because you have the wrong ideology. And of course, for me, the belief thing is where it all gets so messed up for everybody, because it always comes down to, you must have faith. And when we look at most of the believers, especially these guys on YouTube, the evangelicals, the nut jobs, the flat earthers, and all these kind of people, it all comes down to what they believe. And all of them tend to miss actually the deeper teachings of it. For example, they don't know the mathematical formulas within the archetypes. They don't understand the translation issues and actually what some of the original wordings really were, and how that changes the sentence structure and how the metaphor is constructed. They can't look beyond belief, because for them, belief is all about self-validation. And are my beliefs correct? Am I approved of? And do I approve of you and what you believe? It's the maddest thing. The moment people get into ideology, it's all lost.